She went and met her husband where he was seated and sweating. She asked him how it all happened and he told her. Tina was concerned. She decided to wait with her husband for the outcome of the ongoing surgery. The surgery took a very long time. Once in a while, a nurse will come out and then go back into the theater. Mr. David and Tina kept sleeping and waking up at intervals in the hospital waiting room. They earnestly wanted Naomi to be healed. Time was crawling, but finally, the doctor came out. He was wearing a smile on his face. Mr. David was the first to see the doctor. He tried standing up, and Tina, who was sitting beside him, woke up too. "Doctor, how is she? Hope the surgery was successful," Mr. David asked the doctor anxiously. "By the grace of God, and not ours, the little girl is safe and out of danger. Yes, the surgery was successful." "Yes. Oh, thank God," Mr. David said out loud while his wife hugged him happily. "Please bring down your voices," the doctor said in a low tone. Okay, Mr. David said. "She needs a lot of resting time. She's likely to lose a part of her memory, which will only come back with time by God's grace. Also, she may not be able to talk well for a while. I have given some list of drugs to the nurse. You get them and make sure she takes them as prescribed. She really needs a lot of love and care from you both to get well soon." "Can we see her now?" Tina asked softly. "Sure, but she needs no disturbance. She needs maximum rest," the doctor said and walked out. The couple thanked the doctor and walked into the hospital room. Immediately, Tina walked into the room and set her eyes on Naomi. Streams of tears ran down her cheeks. She started sobbing bitterly while Mr. David tried to console her. The headmistress left with a heavy heart. She knew Naomi was the only daughter of Mr. Bright. She knew what it felt like for a child to be missing. She blamed the teacher in charge for being so careless. The class teacher wanted to defend herself, but she knew that nothing she would say would justify the fact that Naomi got missing under her watch. She only prayed and hoped for Naomi to be safe wherever she was. Mr. Bright stopped a taxi, which would take him and his wife back home. He kept consoling her as they drove back home together. When they got home, Mr. Bright began to make calls, creating awareness that his daughter was missing. He wanted to go to the police station, but he couldn't leave his wife all alone in the condition she was in. Sandra sat on the chair in the living room, feeling so weak. It felt as if she had just lost a part of herself. She wondered why such a heavy temptation would come to her. She couldn't blame her husband. She knew it wasn't intentional on his side. But she wondered why, of all days, it should be the same day that traffic would hold her up. If only there was no traffic, she might have gotten to school before Naomi met with the accident. Sandra stood up slowly. Then she walked towards her room in slow steps after wiping her tears. "Where are you going to, Sandy?" Mr. Bryce asked, looking at his wife. Sandra just shook her head from left to right and kept walking towards her room. She entered her room and knelt down beside her bed. "Father, I know you won't let anything happen to the only child you've given me. I know you will heal her, even though she's not here with me. Whatever hospital she has been taken to, let her be healed, because I trust in you, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Amen," Mr. Bright responded loudly. Sandra turned and looked at him. He had followed her into the room. Mr. Bright consoled his wife. They had no appetite for food. He took his wife to the bathroom and helped her take a shower. After they were done, they retired to bed. Both Mr. Bright and Sandra couldn't find sleep, as lots of questions kept running through their minds.
Who had taken Naomi? Why did he leave for another city with Naomi without their consent? Was Naomi really safe out there? How will they get to see their only daughter again? Tina started sobbing bitterly as she saw the condition of Naomi. Mr. David held his wife and took her out of the room. The doctor had warned them not to disturb Naomi to avoid any complication. Years ago, when Mr. David got married to Tina, Tina got pregnant for the first time. The couple were so happy for their incoming child. It took only a few weeks and Tina had a miscarriage. She cried because she couldn't tell what actually caused the miscarriage. She took in again. This time, she tried being careful and avoided everything the doctor told her to avoid. Finally, she gave birth to a baby boy. Mr. David and Tina were so happy. They called their little boy Pascal. After the birth of Pascal, the doctor came with a sad news that Tina won't be able to take in anymore due to some complications which she had. Mr. David and Tina were not that worried because they had gotten their bundle of joy and they never wanted many children in the first place. Pascal grew into a very smart child. He was admired by many because of how intelligent he was. He became his parents' pride. As time rode by, Pascal fell sick. He was taken to the hospital for treatment, and after some treatment, he got better. After a few weeks, he got sick again. He was once again taken to the same hospital and he got better. It suddenly became a habit for Pascal to fall sick after every week. It didn't disturb Mr. David and Tina that much because they had money to buy drugs for their son. Pascal then began to lose weight and his sickness became so serious. That was when Tina suggested that they change to another hospital. Mr. David agreed and Pascal was taken to another hospital. When they got to the hospital, a doctor was called because of how serious Pascal's case was. After much checkup with the doctor, he called the couple into his office, leaving Pascal lying on the hospital bed. The doctor told David and Tina that their son had leukemia, blood cancer. He told them that leukemia was controllable and treatable in children, but Pascal's case had reached its peak and he could die at any moment. He advised Mr. David and his wife to go and spend their last moments with their son. Tina cried her eyes out in the doctor's office. Then she went with David to go and see their son. When they arrived, Pascal was just staring at his parents with his eyes partly opened. The couples tried their best to hide their tears. Pascal smiled at his mother while holding her tight. Suddenly, Tina could feel Pascal's grip loosening up. She looked at his son and realized that Pascal was gone. She shook him vigorously, trying to wake him up, but he was really gone. Mr. David stood looking at his son and tears ran down his cheeks, while Tina hugged Pascal, crying her eyes out. Looking at Naomi, who was lying down with bandages, made Tina remember how her son had given up the ghost on a hospital bed while smiling at her. Who knows? Who knows if she's the only one her parents have, just like us? How would they cope without their daughter? Tina asked her husband in tears. Tomorrow morning, I'll go back and look for her parents, using the name on the school uniform, Mr. David said, still consoling his wife. The next morning, Mr. Bright woke up. He sat on his bed thinking of how he was going to find his only daughter. He decided he was going to go to the police station and lay a complaint about his missing daughter. A call came through his phone. It was from the proprietress of the school. She was calling to plead for forgiveness and assure him that the school was going to help and make sure Naomi is brought back to him. Mr. Bright knew that those words only came because she was afraid of losing her school. He only wanted his daughter to be found and nothing more. So he left for the police station to lay a complaint about his missing daughter. The police assured Mr. Bright that they would try their best to bring his daughter back to him. By the time Mr. Bright came back from the police station, he wanted to go to work. But in a second thought, he decided to go back home and be with his wife. He got back home and discovered that the door was open. He had asked Sandra to shut the door behind him. Mr. Bright opened the door slowly to know why the door was still left open. Back at the hospital, Mr. David went back to where Naomi was lying with his wife, Tina. She hadn't moved ever since the surgery was done. She lay still with the white clothes she was changed into, and the bandage on her head had a slight stain of blood. The couple just sat on an empty bed opposite where Naomi lay. "She's so beautiful and adorable," Tina said, hugging her husband as they stared at Naomi. "Yes, she is. Her parents must be lucky to have her. Thank God the operation was successful," Mr. David said with a smile. He looked at his watch and the time said 2 minutes past 1 a.m. "I think you need to go back home and rest, my dear. You have to be at work early, remember?" Mr. David said to his wife. Tina tapped her phone and saw that it was early morning already. She told her husband that she wouldn't be able to find sleep if she went back to the house. Mr. David tried persuading his wife, but she wanted to stay with him and Naomi. He felt the way Tina just kept staring at Naomi with so much love. As time went by, Tina slept off on her husband's laps while Mr. David leaned on the wall, sitting on the bed. The reflection of the early morning sun found its way into the room where Mr. David and his wife were. Noises of people moving around inside the hospital woke Mr. David and Tina up. They were tired. The first thing they did was to check on Naomi. She was still sleeping and had not yet opened her eyes. Mr. David left the room and went to get the nurse that was attending to Naomi. He asked for the uniform that Naomi was putting on earlier before they had her clothes changed. The nurse gave the uniform to Mr. David. He went outside and placed the uniform perfectly at the back of his seat. After staring at Naomi for a while, Tina left the hospital room. She was already running late for work. She left Mr. David in the hospital and left for their house. Mr. David gave the nurse some tip and asked her to look after Naomi. Then he left the hospital and went towards his car. Something surprised Mr. David. He had 2 flat tires. He never noticed it when he had come to keep Naomi's uniform. He had just 1 spare tire, so he decided to walk down the road to get help. A few minutes later, Mr. David came back with someone and his tire was changed. It was time for him to travel back to the city where he had knocked Naomi down to look for her parents. As Mr. David approached the said city, something strange happened. He turned to pick up the uniform which he had placed perfectly at the back of his car. But to his greatest bewilderment, the uniform wasn't there anymore. Mr. David stepped on his brakes immediately. He decided to clear off the road and search for the uniform well. He parked his car and came down. He searched for the uniform, but it was nowhere to be found. Who do you think hid Naomi's school uniform? Do you think Tina would want Naomi to return to her biological parents? What do you think would be Tina's ulterior motives? We will find out in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching, and please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the story, give it a thumbs up, comment and share. Thank you and God bless you.